you have Will Stein at number 3. I don't actually hate that, really. For me, though, I just think play calling was so bad in 2 big games versus Washington that I just have my doubts. Like, I have my doubts in reference to when you're playing 2 big games, and by the way, Will Stein's OC at Oregon, when you're playing in the 2 biggest games, I know that they put up yards, offensive production, things like that. But, Joe, I remember that first Washington game when they went for it multiple times on 4th down, and we were blaming Dan Lanning. Remember, like, they should have kicked field goals. They could have won that game in Seattle. And the offensive play calling that they had when they went for it on multiple times on 4th down was abysmal. Abysmal. You got 4th and 1, and you're trying to roll Bo Nix out right. You're having chaotic play calls. I think the inexperience that Will Stein had in that big moment wind up backfiring for him. This is all that continues to stay in my head. You, on the most crucial plays that you ran all last year, most of them came down to what you were doing offensively and offensive production. I get that you were a top 5 offense. Fine. You played some really shitty teams. Okay. The bottom line for me is when, Joe, they played. Joe,
wait. So you can't.
They didn't face a top 15 defense all year.
You can't put Garrett Riley on here, who at Clemson in he had a half of season of offensive success, not a full season, a half of season of offensive success against shit opponents.
The problem about Garrett Riley is they had 5 straight games where they faced top 15 defenses. So there's a massive difference when you are facing elite defenses, elite teams, versus when you are playing Washington, who, by the way, Joe, is not a good defensive team. We know this. In the most critical times and critical situations, the play calling for me was not good enough.
I completely disagree. I think that Will Stein, for them to go from Kenny Dillingham, who was regarded as one of the best offensive minds in college football, leaves for Arizona State, and the offense gets better. Bo Nix is even more cerebral and quick decision-making than he was the season before. Bo Nix hit his stride as an elite of a college football player as he had been in his entire career. It was the best season that he had played. I think that it is worth recognizing an important. What?
Check down Bo Nix.
Look, we can make fun of the offense and how simple it was, because it was a lot of really just quick reads, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, but it still produced one of the most productive running backs in the country, one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country, and one of the most productive receivers in the country. They were explosively offensively potent. And I understand that they might not have played any top 15 defenses, but they still faced difficult competition throughout the entire stretch of the year. Not all the Pac-12 opponents that they saw were weak and soft.
That they faced.
Oregon State. Oregon State was known for the quality of their defense. And they put up pretty good points on them.
Yeah, they did. That's fine. Again, I think it's laughable when you're talking about, like, if Oregon State is the best defense that you faced, right? Joe, to me, I think that there's got to be a level of who your opponents were and when you faced a top-tier opponent. Joe, do you really agree with what they did against Washington both times in critical downs and critical situations? Like that in and of itself, the play calling that he had there at the end should legitimately make you look at him and say, is he ready for me to put him at 3? Like, I don't think that Will. No, there's no way. Because let me tell you this. If Chip Kelly, were put in the same situation, if Denbrock were put in the same situation and they failed, we would look at them at much more of a negative light than we're looking at Will Stein right now.
Okay, so you bring this up and how I have him at 3, and then his in-game decision-making, in certain spots was questionable and should cause for concern. But you have Kirby Moore at number 2. Yeah, that's what's bothering me, is that you were willing to commit to Kirby Moore and to Garrett Riley, who had inconsistencies as well, where I think there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn between Will Stein and Kirby Moore with Missouri and Oregon, where maybe not the most physically gifted quarterbacks were able to be productive. And then you have really dynamic receivers that were some of the best in the country this past year, really good running backs, but in their biggest games against the best opponents, they floundered at times. And their defense was the reason why. Yes, they did. Their defense was the reason why they were able to keep things close with Georgia, and the reason why they were able to beat the shit out of Tennessee.
No, they couldn't stop Georgia to save their life. It was Blake Baker's worst called game. Trust me. Believe me. Let me defend Kirby Moore for a minute.
Okay.
Joe, you have come on this platform and this show and completely took massive amounts of dumps on Brady Cook.
No. In week 2, going into the Kansas State game, I said that he wasn't very good. And then I took those words back. Those words. Missouri fans booed him. They booed him going into that game.
I don't care what they did.
Okay, but
here's the truth.
Go ahead.
He took a Division III running back and made him the leading SEC back in the country with guys like Quinshon Judkins and others. By the way, Luther Burden is fantastic. Joe, name an offensive lineman that was a 4-star. Name someone else besides Luther Burden that was a 4-star. The thing that separates Kirby Moore is that they are building into something. I think it takes longer. Oregon has already established itself. Missouri has not established itself and been able to get the top-tier recruits in there that they need to compete with the LSUs, the Georgias, the Alabamas, etc. But what are they doing? And what is Kirby Moore doing? Joe, you cannot deny that Kirby Moore is developing better as an offensive coordinator than anybody in the country. The simple fact that you can take a D3 running back and Brady Cook, Joe, and get you to 10 wins is immense. By the way, they got to 11 wins, and everybody says, "Oh, so many people opted out against Ohio or for Ohio State." That's cute. Name me people that opted out for Missouri. My point in that would be saying,
well, they have a lot of underclassmen, so it's not like they.
True, but they still had dudes on defense that opted out. So don't come at me and say that Kirby Moore has taken lesser talent. By the way, he is a touchdown away from beating the Heisman Trophy winner. And it wasn't on him. Those losses that they had, LSU, Georgia, Joe, when you're putting up 30 or close to 30 plus points, your defense has to be able to hold on.
Okay, but
he would.
They 39 points against what was. If the offense was as good as you're painting it, they would have beaten LSU. LSU's defense was
they couldn't make a
horrendous
stop
last year.
They could not make a stop. The problem with that was, Joe, when you can't make – if you score 39 points, Joe, you should win. Bottom line, I don't want to hear anything else that if you score 39 points, you should win.
I don't think that is – wait. I believe Oregon put up some really big points in those losses that they had to Washington. Did they not?
There's a difference in facing Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee.
Washington went to the national championship game. We can't just because you didn't think Washington was very good doesn't mean that we can just dismiss that.
So we're talking about a season-long schedule. And by the way, they played Washington. Washington defensively was ass. They were ass, and Washington's defense was better than LSU's defense, and Oregon put up 33 and 31 the 2 times they played against them. And they
I brought up Kirby Moore in the context of talking about Will Stein because it's important, because you're talking about how, well, in some of these big games and these big spots, they didn't do so well. I don't think that it's like a foregone conclusion that Kirby Moore had this perfectly unscathed season. No, I think that there were slip-ups multiple times.
You know what Kirby Moore did have? When they needed to go get a touchdown against Georgia to get it within a 3-point game, they got it. When they needed a touchdown to take the lead against LSU, they got it. By the way, they won every other game. My point is when it came nut-cutting time, they scored touchdowns. They weren't giving things up. Now, Brady Cook threw a pick 6 at the end of the game, and it is what it is. But he hooved it down there because he had to. He didn't have a choice. My only point is that Kirby Moore has taken less. He's made chicken shit and made it into chicken salad. You know, and I know that Oregon has better personnel than Missouri does. You know that.
They do. They obviously do. I also think that we're also not even bringing up the fact that Oregon led most statistical categories for just general offensive production, and
What if,
also had one of the best EPAs per play, which is an important metric for evaluating offensive success. Meanwhile, Missouri was, I think, somewhere in the mid 30s. There's a pretty huge
no,
gap.
they were 28 in EPA.
I'm seeing 36 on this website, but EPA I think is one of the most important stats for me to understanding offensive success, because
sorry,
it is a
in total offense. I'm sorry.
EPA is a depiction of how teams perform above expected. So basically, how explosive is their offense? How quickly can they put points on the board more than they're expected to in most situations? And Oregon checks that box. EPA is what runs college football.
Can I end this argument for you very quickly?
Okay.
If you were a head coach and you were trying to get to a playoff or national championship, what schedule would you rather, Oregon's or Missouri's?
I'd rather actually
Go
I
ahead
don't know. Wait. I don't think that they're pretty even right now, because now that they're playing in the Big Ten. You talking about last year's schedule?
Yeah, last year's schedule. Because
Oregon's, obviously Oregon's.
Okay. So again, what I'm saying is, when I put so much value on when the game is on the line, what do you dial up? I saw Will Stein fall, okay, where I saw Missouri and Kirby Moore rise to the occasion and score to get them back in the game. It's not their fault that their defense sucked. By the way, Oregon has better personnel defensively than Mizzou does. So they should be able to make those stops.
Whoa, no. Missouri is about to have wait. They're going to have 5 guys drafted in the top 4 to 5 guys drafted in the top 100 picks.
Which again, we should talk about what Eli Drinkwitz is doing in developing and recruiting. Their blue chip rate is more close. Let me tell you this. Missouri's blue chip rate is closer to Vandy than it is Alabama's.
Okay, I understand that, but this also kind of ties into why I still don't like the Kirby Moore being ranked as highly as you had him, because their team was far more balanced and strong defensively than Oregon's was. Oregon's defense was really good. It was very strong this past year, but there was a big gap of separation between the two in terms of if they went against one another. I would argue Missouri would probably win because their defense is better. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.